Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 444 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the small crew here this week. Krim, away over at MagicCon Barcelona. He'll be back next week, but this week I'm joined by the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. Recovering from some good European Pro Tour Magic action this weekend.
Did you get up for the start of the top 8? That would be really early your time.
No, I stayed up for the start of the top 8.
Oh,
but then because it started early enough for me, but I didn't watch that. And then I went to sleep and then woke up at like 5 a.m. to watch the back half of it. Although Constructed was fine. Constructed was wake up at like 5, 6 a.m. if you just skip the limited section. So it's not too bad if you skip the limited part.
No, the Japanese Pro Tours, those are the hardest for my time zone, I think. Those are the ones that like start at like 2 a.m. or just something. So European, you got to get up pretty early, but we managed to survive, and it was a pretty interesting event. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is one of our big topics for today. So we had a Modern Pro Tour. We're going to be talking about that. Power creep in Magic is another topic that's come up. And then, because it was MagicCon, we get a bunch of spoilers. So we got a first look at Wilds of Eldraine and also Doctor Who. I think we'll talk most about Wilds of Eldraine, but that's the overview for today. Modern Pro Tours, spoilers, maybe some fish mail. Before we jump into it, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit are the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of all the hassles that go into buy listing your cards, Card Conduit lets you skip them. With their curated service, you can send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use their sorted service and list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. Either way, you'll get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed, and you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. Card Conduit, they are the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's start with the Pro Tour. Well, let's Pro Tour first, and then we'll talk about spoilers. Richard, the format was modern, also limited. What went down at Pro Tour Lord of the Rings?
All right, a lot of One Rings went down. A lot of Rakdos Scam went down, and kind of the story of the Pro Tour was the resurgence of Mono Green Tron. And especially a very specific list of Mono Green Tron, which kind of cut back on the Karn Liberateds, the 7-drop, and played like more interaction to deal with the rest of the board, like dismembers and things like that, but kind of just leaned very heavily on Karn the Great Creator and kind of was able to power through Blood Moons and things like that, right? Because you're topping out with 4 with Little Karn. But yeah, like a lot of Rhinos. We got some Living End, some Amulet Titan. It was basically what you saw in Modern Challenges. After 2 days of battling, the top 8 was 1 Rakdos Scam, 1 Amulet Titan, 3 Mono Green Trons, and 3 Rhinos. And ultimately, it came down to Jake Beardsley with Rakdos Scam winning. It was an epic 5-game banger. Game 5 was scammed out by the scam player with a very easy victory, but Game 4 was one of the best matches of Pro Magic I've seen in a long time. So it was a very interactive, stacksy game where both players kind of stacks themselves out and one ring ticking down, killing the Tron player, things like that. So it's actually a very fun finals. But yeah, Rakdos Scam, not a 1 ring deck. Won the tournament, but 1 ring was in like 50% of the day. It was like all over the place. It was the most played card, 450 copies in 45% of decks, followed by Orcish Bowmasters at 413 copies, 40% of decks, and then followed by Fury. But also Rakdos Scam was also the most played deck of the tournament, so the cards in those decks you're gonna see overrepresented as well.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's not a 1 ring deck, the Scam deck is a Bowmasters deck. That's the other really big Lord of the Rings addition, I think, to the format. You have Bowmasters in the Scam deck. You have the 1 ring, of course, in the Tron deck. We also got the Amulet deck in the top 8. And then the Rhino deck, I guess it is the Lorne Reveal deck. That's its big Lord of the Rings card. Richard's favorite Commander sleeper So all the cards, all the top 8 decks were very influenced by the Lord of the Rings set. We've seen like the Rhinos deck and Living End decks really cutting back on lands because of the new land cyclers. I don't know what to make of this modern format at this point. Like, going into this, the question was, are the Lord of the Rings cards too good? And I don't know. Do you think this settles that debate? Like, coming away from this, I think last week we predicted like 50% One Ring decks is what we had said in the top 8, and it ended up being that. Bowmasters also performed really well, even though Scam didn't put that many players into the top 8, but it was the most played deck on day one, and it still had a relatively good performance. If you actually look at the win rates, people have posted the data. Discounting all the random one-ofs and two-ofs that very few people played, it was really Rhinos, Scam, Mono Green Tron. All of those had between like a 54 and 56% win rate through the Swiss rounds. So I think those are like solidly the top tier deck of the meta. What do we make of this, Richard? Like, what do we make of this format, this Lord of the Rings driven format?
I think it's fine. So on one hand, you look at the numbers, okay? You're like, the One Ring, 45% of decks. That's absurd. That's very high. It needs to be banned, right? That's a very high play rate. What was the Hogak play rate? It's got to be like up there. Do you recall off the top of your head?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I bet it's less than the One Ring, though. I mean, and remember, too, the One Ring's colorless, so it has a inherent advantage, right, of being able to show up in more decks than, like a Hogak or something. But still, yeah.
So on one hand, those numbers look absurd, and if you just looked at numbers, you could justify a banning. On the other hand, if you look at the eye test, Modern seem fine, right? Because the One Ring is colorless, any deck can play it, and it's also like at a mana value that any deck can play it, and it's also at a mana value that you can choose not to play it as well, right? Because it's a 4-drop, so you can just plan to skip it and try to aggro someone, or you can be like, I want to play mid-rangey, or I want to like grind them out or something, and you throw it in your deck. Like, in terms of the metagame, it wasn't really skewed in the same way that you see when people are playing like Hogak, right? Like there weren't any like crazy main board cards, or people weren't like, their decks weren't totally invalidated just because the One Ring existed. So I don't know. I actually think it's fine after watching it this weekend. It's like Brainstorm, right? It's like absurdly strong, but everyone has access to it in Legacy, right? So Legacy is a blue format, right? But in Modern, everyone has access to colorless One Ring, right? And it can be beaten. And even when you play it, yes, it snowballs out of control, but so does like, Ragavan. So do like many other cards in Modern. But like, it doesn't dictate the strategy. So you can have 4 One Ring decks and the 4 decks look like totally different. So to me, it's like a Brainstorm type card. I don't think it's that bad. And I think Wizards can make an actual like argument for not banning this card, and like it would not be pure copium, I think.
So do you think we'll still have a bunch of different One Ring decks after this Pro Tour? That was one of my questions, because it seemed like, so heading into the Pro Tour, I think if you ask just the average observer of Modern what the best One Ring deck is, I think people would have mostly said Omnath. Like, that is, on the metagame page, more played than Tron. As soon as the One Ring came out, that's what everyone went to. Omnath works really well with One Ring. It gains you back to life. It makes 4 mana to play the One Ring. But it turns out that 4-color Omnath actually flopped really hard at this Pro Tour. It was one of the worst decks. It had like a 43% win percentage or something, which is really, really bad. On the other hand, Tron was great. It showed up in the top 8. Its win percentage was great. It seems like people figured out, the pros figured out that in the One Ring meta, Karn the Great Creator is kind of like the key to the format. That is a card that gets you your One Rings in some cases from your sideboard if you need it, although a lot of the Tron decks were just playing 4 in the main deck. It also shuts down your opponent's One Ring. So do you think we'll still see a diversity of One Ring decks coming out of the Pro Tour, or do you think Tron is like the default One Ring deck now, and if you're going to build around the One Ring, you're going to play Tron with Karn in the One Ring?
I mean, I think you can beat Tron. I mean, we saw Rakdos Scam traditionally very bad against Tron, but not in 2023, right? Like, there are so many Scam victories for the Scam deck against Tron. Like, we saw in the finals, right? Like, a turn 1 Fury is like unbeatable because there's no like removal in Mono Green Tron. So your 3-4-1 4-4 double striker will get the job done, right? And you can go Ragavan into Blood Moon, right? And we didn't actually see this on camera during the finals, but there's the best scam of like Voidwalker into Thoughtseize, take your Ulamog you. So I don't think it's the best deck. I mean, I think it's the best One Ring deck, but because it's more one-dimensional than, let's say, like Omnath. Like Omnath just kind of grinds you out. Like I think you could beat Tron. I will note that like Tron is the best deck because you said you can stop the One Ring, you can get your own One Ring, but also when you're drawing cards off the One Ring, your top decks are like insane, right? You're playing like basically like Legacy 8 post or whatever, right? Or 12 post, whatever. How many posts there are in that deck? But like, if you don't have Tron, your 3 cards will get you Tron. And then when you have Tron, you're slamming like Ulamogs and Ugins. Other people are like, well, I drew an extra Thoughtseize. You're all like useless, right? So it's just all around a very good and Tron deck. And it can also get rid of its own One Ring quite easily. Like Karn can punch it down. They're playing that Caterpillar in their deck to get rid of it. So it has the most synergy with the One Ring. But I don't know. Just play a fast clock with a Blood Moon backup and you probably get there against Tron, right? So
yeah. I mean, so Scam, it did take down the entire tournament. I don't know, do you think it's better than Tron? I was looking at some of the matchup data, and it looks like it's actually a pretty close matchup. I think it's very, like, hand-dependent, play-draw dependent. Like, if that last game, the game 5, so game 4 you said was epic, and it was. That was an amazing match. The last game of the Pro Tour was actually pretty anticlimactic. It was like the Scam deck having the double grief on turn 1, into Blood Moon on turn 3, and I don't think Kelcano, like, did he play anything? He might have played a Relic of Progenitus or something, but he literally he got scammed out and did literally nothing. I think if he had been on the play or like the hands are slightly different, that matchup could have went very, very differently. So I actually think it's a super close matchup. We did get to see Voidwalker, not in the finals, but we did you see the, like, I think it was a semifinal match against Amulet Titan, where Voidwalker, like, stole multiple Primeval Titans from the Amulet player, and, like, so that deck, oh boy, it scams in so many ways. It's actually kind of hilarious. You got, like, the Grief scams, you got the Voidwalker, like, Thoughtseize your Primeval Titan or Ulamog scams, you got the Blood Moon, the ultimate OG scam card that, like, just jam it and hope your opponent can't do anything. Do we want that to be the best deck in Modern, though? Like, is that a play pattern that you want of just, like, I'm a Blood Moon player. I love playing Blood Moon decks. I love trying to jank people out of games, but I don't know if I want the jank 'em out deck to be the Pro Tour winning deck. Like, is that a thing we actually want in Modern?
You get scammed, but you're scammed all the time, right? You're like, you're like double Thoughtseize, like bring back my grief, and then they're like, okay, I solitude your grief, and then I played land Omnath, and then you lose. So there, and like remember, game 4 started with a turn either 2 or 3 Blood Moon, right, and also some kind of scam type opening, but you know the Tron player is able to stabilize. Like you need to remember the scam is on face value a 3-for-1 against yourself, right? So it needs to do a lot of work to get there. And like if Omnath is popular, scam is like so bad, right? Because they just solitude your thing, and then you have like absolutely nothing. It's only because Tron has no interaction that monkey is like going wild, right? The turn 1 Fury is going wild, but the other build of Tron, the Nielsen build, plays Dismember. Right, so if there was a Dismember on that turn 1 play, the game is like probably in Tron's favor at that point, right? But of course, the counterplay is if you're on the draw and you Dismember, and then they have another like, Undying spell, then you're like you're totally dead, right? So I don't know. It's 2023 Magic, Seth. You just blow by your opponent doing like scammy things and get there. Yeah, I noticed day 1 was totally not interactive. It was just like people just like playing things and just popping off and like winning without like really any care for what their opponent was doing. So, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of 23 Magic, right?
That is kind of like what all the big decks do in their own way, right? Like Rhinos is just like, I'm gonna make 2 4/4 Tramplers on turn 3 every game and like see if you can beat it. Tron's like, I'm just gonna play my big things in the One Ring. The Scam deck's just gonna like do the scam stuff, play a Blood Moon, strip your hand, see if you can beat it. So it is like in some ways interactive though, right? Like that's been one of the big conversations that like, is Modern more interactive now than it is in the past? Like, I guess on some level it is. Like technically the double grief scam thing, like you are interacting with your opponent, but for some reason it doesn't feel like traditional interactive decks to me. When I think of like interactive, I'm thinking of like Sphinx's Revelation Blue-White Control, where you're just like trying to do that. Or like old school 2015 Jund, where you're like Thought Sees You and Dark Confidant and grind you out with a Maelstrom Pulse. Do these decks count as interactive decks, since they're technically like disrupting their opponent with Griefs or like Thought Seizes or Blood Moons? I don't know.
You're trying to get out from, you're trying to Boseiju the lands, you're trying to get out from Blood Moon locks. I think it's actually very interactive, but I think there's also a lot more non-interactive games. So like of the interactive games, like they're actually, you know, very long. And I think they actually said on camera, like there was a Scam versus Tron match that went to time. Like when you get the interactive games, like that game 4 we had in the finals, they're super interactive and grindy and long. But you also kind of get the scam games, and not just out of the scam deck, right? Like any deck can scam you. Like Amulet Titan, I remember there was a match where they had like no lands or something, and like two amulets on the battlefield, and they're like, if I top deck a land, you lose. And the other guy had like a full board of creatures, and then he top decked the land and proceeded to destroy the opponent. So there's always kind of those nut draws that these decks have. So I don't know. I don't know. I think it's fine. Do you think the One Ring needs to be banned, Seth? Or even Bowmasters? Do you think any adjustments need to be made for Modern based on the Pro Tour?
So Bowmasters, I think I'm okay with for the time being. In some ways, it might be my hatred of Ragavan. One thing I do like about Bowmasters is it has like, and this is kind of oddly what we've talked about for the past year, like, what do you do if Ragavan's the best thing in the format? Like, how do you top that with your next Modern Horizons set? And Lord of the Rings isn't exactly Modern Horizons, but it is a direct-to-modern set. They didn't print a better Ragavan. They just printed, like, a really good card that snipes Ragavan. And now Ragavan is, I think, another good card rather than, like, the top threat in the format. So I like that aspect of Bowmasters. The One Ring, I feel like it's gonna get old. Like, I'm not in the, like, they have to ban it right now, but I also can't imagine this being what Modern is for the long term. So I guess I'm at the point where, like...
What about enough to sell sets for Christmas, Seth?
Oh... Yeah, I mean, maybe that's... Although, really, they're giving away the One Ring in bundles and so forth. Like, isn't it a card that's good enough in Commander that it should be fine? Like, won't it still just the hype around it, Commander play, even if you banned it or, like, did something creative, like restricted it or something in Modern... They can still sell this set, right? You got Nazguls. That's gonna sell the set. Who needs the One Ring?
It's fine. Okay, but I mean, do you want to go back to old Modern before Lord of the Rings? Was that really any better? Like, I don't know, right? Like, let's say you axe the One Ring and we go back to whatever we were before the One Ring. It's really just the same, except everyone didn't play the One Ring. It's kind of just the same. I have a third challenger for you.
Okay.
There is a card with 68% play rate in decks. Ooh. For reference, the One Ring was only 45%. Fury's 47%, actually.
Uh-huh.
And that card is Chalice of the Void. 68% of decks, 355 copies. So less copies than the One Ring. So everyone's playing like 2 ofs in the sideboards.
Yep.
For presumably many of the Cascade decks, right? There's 2 like tier 1 Cascade decks in Rhinos and also Living End. And also, it's just good if you play it on 1 or you play it on 2. Does that need to go? Like, that's an absurd high number. Maybe the Chalice doesn't need to go, but like, does something causing it? Like, if everyone's playing like 68% Rest in Peace, you're like, Leyline of the Void, you're like, that's awkward, right? Like, that's a really high Chalice percentage. That's higher than the One Ring.
Yeah, I think that Rhinos, like, sort of dodges this whole conversation about what's going on in Modern right now because it is heavily influenced by One Ring cards. There are Lord of the Rings card. There's no One Ring. There's no Bowmasters. So people don't think of it the same way. But I think the play pattern of Rhinos is actually, like, one of the least fun in the entire format. Like, it just does
wanted control decks, Seth.
It just does the same thing every single time. Like, it's just built to do the same exact thing every single time as consistently as possible. It doesn't matter what cards they draw, especially, because you're just cascading into it anyway. As long as you get one of your, like, 8 or 12 cascade spells, you do the same thing every time. I think it's actually, like, a very unfun play pattern, personally.
Really? To me, it's Jund. It's kind of, like, weird. It's like this weird control deck and you're playing underpowered 2 4/4s, right? Like the 4/4s are not that big. So you actually need to put in the work to get them to end the game, right? Because it trades with the Fury. If someone's playing Tarmogoyf, it blocks it, or Murktide blocks it. You know, all this, like, it's actually kind of rough, right? So you need to actually use the rest of your cards to force this through. It's actually one of the most interactive decks because the 2 4/4s don't get there. You kind of got to interact and push them through. But they are kind of unfair in that they're just like, Rhino again, right? Can you deal with this? No.
I mean, there's no way I can view the Chalices as an unhealthy card. Like, I think the play rate is really high, but I think that's just a reflection of the power of the Cascade decks. So to me, I view it very differently than like a 4 of main deck card like the One Ring. Like that's a lot different. A 2 of sideboard card that you're bringing in a specific matchup to stop your opponent from like pseudo winning the game on turn 3.
The power level is so high in Modern that I need to bring in this card to give me a fog and give me more card advantage. Isn't that the Chalice argument?
Yeah.
I will say that the One Ring, I think if people just played Fog in Modern, it would not be as like memey as they think, because when we saw like the One Ring in the finals, all it does is just Fog, and then the Tron players immediately try to remove it. They draw like 2 cards and then they're trying to remove it so that they don't die to it. So if they just made a souped up Fog, like a Fog that drew a card, or like a put like, I don't know, amassed an army or something, like just like added some value onto Fog, it might actually be playable. Because people were just like fogging.
Do you think
for
if they actually put like Spider Fog in Modern, do you think people would play it? I guess maybe it's too expensive. It would have to be like a cheaper Spider Fog.
Like, what about a pitch elemental that like fogged on the way down and was like a 3/4 or something like that? I don't know. Like something that's not just a straight fog, but it has to be better than like 1/2 spiders, but not quite One Ring level where you just drew 8 million cards.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting. I see that people are playing Fog Hate like Questing Beast. People came prepared. The Kai's deck in the top 8, the Team Rhino deck, is going with the Questing Beast plan to get around the One Ring. So I guess maybe Fog would be fine. Like, there are ways to hate on Fog, so maybe a more souped up Fog could be good. I think the other side of the One Ring conversation, though, is like, what if you frame it like this is a colorless time warp for 4 mana that also draws you 3 cards. Like, if you just say that line of like text, isn't that just absurd and bannable on its face? Like, wait, this is a mana cheaper than a time warp, which is banned in Historic on Arena because it's so busted, but it's colorless, so any deck can play it, and it draws me 3 cards. Like, isn't that just like an absurd thing that we're even saying these words?
But it's colorless. Everyone can play it, Seth.
Yeah, but
the problem is if it was colored, right? If it was colored and only one deck could play it, but because it's colorless, every deck can play it, and that it's also at 4 mana that people can actually try to go under it. But like, if I said, what if I gave you Ancestral Vision that also shuffled your library and, you know, had other synergies? Is that absurd and bannable? Like, yes, it's Brainstorm, but everyone plays it because it's blue and 1 mana. Like, if we made Thoughtseize colorless, would it need to be banned? Or if we made, I don't know what's the next like most played card that's like,
but don't you end up in
Ragavan colorless? Kind of needs to be banned, huh?
But isn't it kind of the One Ring problem eventually? Or the Mental Misstep problem eventually, where like everyone just has to play this card to keep up with everyone else playing the card. Like, I think that's my dislike from it, and maybe it's because I like brewing decks and playing like janky things. But I feel a lot of pressure if I'm playing Modern or if I'm playing Historic. I feel like I kind of have to play the One Ring just because my opponent's playing the One Ring. And if they have the One Ring and I don't, or I don't have a very specific, like, kill you super quick, turn 3 Rhino plan or something, I feel like I'm at a huge disadvantage. So is that good? Do we want everyone to feel like I gotta buy a $200 playset of the One Rings just because everyone else is doing it?
So you can go under the One Ring, but like Mental Misstep counters Mental Misstep. So you have to actually play it to counter other people's missteps. But I don't know, like Rhinos doesn't play the One Ring. Scam doesn't play the One Ring. Amulet Titan doesn't play the One Ring. Like,
well,
and if I build a deck,
but...
oh, it does. Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, if I build a deck for Modern, I gotta be like, can you handle Cascade crap coming at you on turn 2 or 3? Like, yeah, you gotta be able to handle that, right? Can you handle some land-based cheaty stuff in like Tron and Titan, right? Like, yeah, you gotta be able to handle that, right? Can you handle getting your hand Thoughtseize into Oblivion or a Blood Moon? Like, yeah. Can you handle your opponent fogging on turn 4 and drawing 3 cards? I don't know. Like, I think these are fair assessments you need to make.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't push to say that the One Ring has to be banned next week. Like, I'm not at that point yet. At the same time, if I think about a year from now, can I imagine me still enjoying Modern that much if 50% of decks are playing the One Ring? No, I don't think. I don't think so.
Modern Horizons 3 will be out. I mean, we just go back to the alternate world, right? Like, can you handle a monkey every game? Do you want to see Red and 6 every game? Would you like to see Omnath every game? I was actually cheering for Tron because, like, Tron was, like, in the gutters, right? Like, Tron was actually not a deck for quite a while. So we're like, oh, Karn is back. But Karn is actually cut from the deck. It's the other Karn. Karn has been power crept by 4 mana Karn now. But I don't know. I think when the weekend started, I thought One Ring was definitely getting banned. But after watching it, I'm like, it's actually not that bad. It's actually like, it's like okay.
So I'm glad you mentioned the power creep thing. I got 2 more Pro Tour things I want to ask you about before we talk spoilers. So one is, a big conversation happened as a result of this Pro Tour about the amount of power creep in the game. Someone rightly noticed that if you look at the 10 most played creatures at the Pro Tour, every single one is Modern Horizons forward. I think the oldest is Seasoned Pyromancers from the first Modern Horizons, but it's Orcish Bowmaster's Fury, Endurance, Subtlety, Ragavan, Grief, Delighted Halfling, Voidwalker, Seasoned Pyro, Shardless Agent. Is this too high of an amount of power creep? Like, should we have any concerns about how much power creep has accelerated in Magic? Because I remember when we started the podcast, even not that long ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, we would talk about how Wizards, compared to other games, had always done a really good job of controlling power creep. Like, compared to Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, it wasn't snowballing out of control. It seems like maybe that's changed now, and we've reached a point where power creep is greatly accelerated. Is this something that's concerning, or do we just embrace it and Modern rotates now when a new Modern Horizon set comes out and expect this level of power creep to continue?
Oh, it's out of control. It's the fault of the death of Standard, right? Before, Standard used to be the most played format. So you could print lower power cards, and when Standard rotates, your lower power cards can be played. But now that Commander and Modern and all these kind of eternal formats are the main focus, the only way to play new cards is to have them be more powerful than the old cards. So I think Modern is okay because we don't have as many Modern sets, but Commander is getting power crept into oblivion, right? Because there's so many Commander products. Every product is a Commander product. How do you sell it? You have to have a better, stronger card. So yeah, I think this is Modern Horizons' fault, right? The minute they started printing cards directly into Modern, the only way to sell it is to make them playable, right? If you release an entire set of garbage and you're like, I'm not going to power creep Modern, no one's going to play it, and then that's not going to sell, and that defeats the purpose. So, when people are asking for like Pioneer Masters or something, like, no. Like, you're just going to get power crept, right? Like,
no.
Any Horizons type set will power creep that format. So even like Pauper Horizons or something will power creep it. So yeah, it's just printing for eternal formats where you have no escape from it. You can't just reset the power level, except with bannings, but you'd have to ban a lot of cards, like all of Modern Horizons 1 and 2 or something to get it back down, right?
Yeah, I think we forget that like supplemental products with unique cards is a relatively new addition to Magic. Like, every supplemental product until I think the original Commander decks actually were all reprints. There were never new cards in these. And really, like Conspiracies, Commander Legends, Modern Horizons, these all just came around in the last 5-7 years, something like that. So it's a pretty new addition to the game. And I think you're right. That's what has really accelerated power creep. And I don't know how it ever ends in Commander or Modern. Like, I don't think it can really end at this point. Although I do wonder, Wizards with their changes to Standard, one thing they mentioned several times is like they want people to feel comfortable buying Magic cards. We want to like not have random bannings because people will be afraid to buy cards. We don't want Standard to rotate as often because people will be afraid to buy cards. Should we have some fear because of power creep when it comes to buying into Commander and Modern staples? Like when you see a Ragavan at $100 now down to like $50, do you think, wow, I got to get that because it's really good? Or do you think, wow, I better not get that because it's going to get power crept in a couple years and be worthless? Like Tarmogoyf now from $200 to $20 or whatever. Like, does it shake your confidence in buying these expensive cards at all?
There was a time in Modern where you could actually be like, in 2 years, I want to play with this deck of cards, so I'm going to start building towards it. Like every month, I buy like one Tarmogoyf or something, right? And then in like a year, I'll have a deck. I would 100% not do that, right? If I wanted to play with the cards, it has to be right now, and I would play with it right now. And it will get power crept or banned. Like, look at Tarmogoyf, look at Liliana, look at Jund. Like, Jund is essentially the best cards with no synergies at that point in time. And like all the cards from past Jund decks are no longer playable. All the 4-drops, unplayable. 3-drops, unplayable. 2-drops, unplayable, right? So the only thing that remains is like Thoughtseize, right? And they will power creep Thougtseize at one point. So I don't know about this. I would not be buying for the future to build my collection or something like that, right? I would just buy the cards I want right now. And I would actually sell them when I don't need them as well. Like I would not just hold on to them randomly because like even things that are untouchable, Teferi's Protection, it will get power crept. It will get power crept.
It will. Yeah. I don't know how you power creep a Thoughtseize, but yeah, I agree that everything will be power crept and
put a body on it, Seth. Grief.
Yeah. Oh boy. Oh my goodness. Or the other thing is like it'll just get reprinted a ton. So from a financial perspective, like if it doesn't get power crept, it'll get reprinted and reprinted and reprinted. So you still probably don't want to be holding on to those cards super long term if you're not using them. My other Pro Tour question for you, Richard. So I did a little short on the YouTube yesterday about my takeaways from the Pro Tour, about like the big 3 decks, about the One Ring, about Tron being back. And I focused on decks that were heavily played. What I didn't mention, because a short's only a minute long, so you don't have time for it, but like technically, if you look at the win rates, Merfolk was the best deck at the tournament. It had an 80% win rate. It went 8-2. Does this matter? That's my question for you. How do you make sense of these decks like Merfolk, 4-color Reanimator, Urza Thopter Sword that posted really good win rates, but a single player played them, or in some cases maybe 2 players played them? Does that matter? Does 80% win rate Merfolk matter compared to 56% win rate Rhinos or whatever with hundreds of matches being played?
Yes, because this is the reason we like Modern, right? The whole point we like Modern is it's a large card pool and you can play a wide range of decks. So the fact that these kind of unknown decks can put up results are pretty good, right? Merfolk you listed. Merfolk makes sense, right? It's a fast clock with counter magic backup. We have like Burn showed up. I mean, Burn's always been around, but like Hammer Time showed up, Thopter Sword, Murktide. Like if you just look at the 8-2 and 7-2, 7-3 deck list, there's a lot of decks. So it lends you to the idea that maybe if you have a pet deck and maybe if you practice it enough that you can actually get there with it. Because I'm sure everyone knows how to play against Scam, but do you actually know how to play against Merfolk? Beyond the fact that like I hope they don't have all these lords or something, right? Like it's probably an intricate matchup, but if you don't have the practice, like you're gonna get, you're gonna lose a couple percentage points there, right? So I think it is important. I think this is the reason why Modern is good. Because if it was actually like all Scam, Rhinos, Tron for all like 300 deck lists, then you're like, do I want to play this format, right? But because it's so varied, you can actually play one of your tier 2 or tier 3 decks and still get there.
I think we saw an example of this actually in the top 8 with Dom Harvey and Amulet Titan. If you don't know Dom Harvey, he's like the biggest Amulet Titan supporter. He wrote like a 80-something page primer, like literally wrote the book on the Amulet Titan deck. if you look at Amulet Titan overall, like 3 or 4 people played it. Its win rate was like 47%, 46%. If you discount Dom, Harvey, on the other hand, went 8-2, cruised into the top 8. So it definitely shows that Modern still does reward you for knowing your deck really well. And you still can be an Amulet Titan player, a Merfolk player, a Hammer Time player, or a Zethopter Sword player, and find success in the format if you know your deck really well. I do think there's one big asterisk, though, which is I think your deck has to have a proactive game-ending aggressive game plan. Because if you look through these results, Control sucked. Like, some people tried Izzet Control, some people tried Jeskai Control. Actually, a decent number of people played Dimir Control. No matter what version of Control you choose, the win rate's horrible. From like, the best was Dimir Control at 45%, which is like bad. And then a lot of the like 1-off, 2-off control decks were like 30-something%, just like absolutely unplayable. So I think as long as your deck is like, okay, I actually am progressing the game and trying to kill my opponent, there's a lot of different things that you can do in Modern. I don't think you want to be reactive, though. Like, how can you be reactive? How can you build a reactive deck that's going to answer the Blood Moons from Scam and the Griefs from Scam, answer the One Rings and Tron lands from Tron, answer turn 3 Rhinos from Rhinos, answer turn 2 Hammer Time kills? I don't think you can do it. Can you? Is Modern just not a format for those reactive, try to, like, play the Crim deck, the Drago, like, stop all your stuff decks?
Control is forever dead. And the Dimir deck is so cute. It's like, I'm going to play these subpar 1-for-1s. And then I'm going to rely on the One Ring to power up my hand again so I can keep playing my subpar cards, keep under control. But like Krim would say, everything is Avengers level threat. Anything resolves, you're dead. So you can try to control everything and have the perfect card in hand at every moment. Or you can take the easy way out and just do the proactive thing.
Just
and
kill him.
Right,
Yeah,
like there's no scam win with Dimir Control. Every other deck has a scam win, right? They have a nut draw where they're like, if you don't have this exact response, you lose. There's no such thing for Control, right? Control is like, I'm gonna grind like every turn, every play out. So it's very hard to do, and I think Control is actually dead in Modern forever. I don't think we're getting Control back at any point. In the same ways, you really, I guess, like, we have like Miracles and Legacy. Like when the power level is so high, it's so hard to control. You might as well just go proactive. And I think that's where we are with Modern.
I don't know if I'd say it's dead forever, but I think it's definitely dead right now. Like, where the meta's at right now, I would not want to be playing a control deck that's trying to react to what the opponent's doing. Like you said, you really, as long as your deck has a nut draw that can take out your opponent on turn 3 or turn 4, the deck's probably pretty playable. Some are going to be better than others. Some are going to have higher win rates. But as long as your deck has that, you can actually play it in a Modern tournament and find success with it. If it doesn't have that, then I think you should just not play. Go play Pioneer or play Standard or something. If you want to get your control fix, go play Standard. Everyone can play Control in Standard. It's very good. Just don't try it in Modern now. There's too many diverse threats to actually build a control deck to deal with. If the pros can't do it, I don't think we can do it.
I'm renaming every deck on the Goldfish site to Scam.
Yeah.
I don't know why Rakdos gets the scam. Like, everyone scams. Like, Natural Tron, scam.
What?
Like, turn 1, 2, Amulet, scam. Rhinos, scam. Living End, scam. Like, they all scam you out of a game of Magic, right? So,
yeah.
I don't know why Rakdos gets the bad rap of, like, scamming people. Like, you have to scam in Modern 2023.
What?
You have to scam.
What is Rakdos scam, Richard? Don't you mean Rakdos evoke?
What's wrong with scam? Why did they call it scam? Like, I don't get it.
Apparently someone said scam has negative connotations, which I guess getting scammed is not a good thing. So I guess I can kind of see where that's coming from. At the same time, we got decks that are like death and taxes and prison. Like, we have a lot of deck names that have negative connotations, I guess, that you wouldn't want to experience in real life.
Is there a positive connotation with getting double griefed or whatever? Like,
it does describe the play pattern of that deck so well, like right down to the Blood Moons. But anyway, that's the Pro Tour. We also got a bunch of preview cards. So we got Doctor Who previews. I don't know if we want to get into those too much. Doctor Who is going to be a kind of Warhammer style Secret Lair Commander deck release. Universes Beyond Commander deck release with like 4 Commander precons coming out in October. You can go over to the website, MTG Preview, see all the cards. It's got a big suspend theme and whatnot. I think most interesting, though, we got an early look at Wilds of Eldraine, the next standard set, releasing the beginning of September. some of the cards are pretty sweet, Richard. Why don't we talk a little bit about those?
All right. They're all over on mtgpreviews.com, so you can check them out. Let's start off with Ashiok, Wicked Manipulator. New Planeswalker, mono black Ashiok, 3 black, 5 loyalty. Has a static ability. If you would pay life while your library has at least that many cards in it, exile that many cards from the top of your library instead. +1, look at the top 2 cards of your library, exile one of them, and put the other in your hand. -2, create 2 1/1 black nightmare creature tokens with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if a card was put into exile this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. -7, target player exiles the top X cards of the library, where X is the total mana value of the cards you own in exile.
Card's pretty sweet. So one of the, actually sort of related to Ashiok, when they did the preview stream, Wizards also said expect a single Planeswalker per set moving forward. So a big change in design philosophy from a world with tons of Planeswalkers. Most sets have 3, 4, some sets have 40, like War of the Spark or whatever. Big change where one Planeswalker per set is going to be the norm moving forward. Do you think that's a good thing, Richard? Are we just past the era of Planeswalkers? Or is this just Wizards feeling like they're wasting mythic slots on cards that are bad in Commanders, so they can't afford to print, so they need more mythics for Commander players?
I was gonna say that. Because Planeswalkers suck in Commander. Like, because otherwise that's like your thing, right? They've been pushing Planeswalkers for so long. It's the unique aspect of Magic the Gathering. Why are they putting an arbitrary rule on them? And the only answer is Commander. And what they really should have done is make Planeswalkers that work in Commander, and not that Teferi that takes turns like every turn, right? Like some other way of making it better. But yeah, it's weird that everything's a Commander card now, Seth. Is this playable in Commander?
Who would have thought Commander would be what saves us from Planeswalker domination? Like, out of all things, this casual format, the hero, all the Planeswalker haters have been waiting for, comes in to minimize the impact of the card type.
I would say it's actually kind of... So if you think about it, like, a lot of cards are just Planeswalkers pretending like not to be Planeswalkers. Like, they accrue value like every single turn they stay on the battlefield. They're just not ticking up or down. Like a Ragavan, you could say is a 1-mana Planeswalker, right? Like, so I don't know. Like, the movement from Planeswalkers mean your creatures have like ETB triggers, attack triggers, and die triggers, such that they do the loyalty thing every turn.
So Ashiok, you think this card's good, Richard? My first reaction is, to me, this looks like a standard playable Planeswalker. It reminds me the most of like Lolth, maybe, where you have a +1 that generates card advantage, you have a negative you can use multiple times that makes tokens to defend your Planeswalker. The ultimate reads weird, but it combines well with the static ability and the +1, so you're going to get a bunch of cards into exile and be able to eventually kill your opponent. I will say, no way this card is designed for Commander, because Commander players, I guess casual players in general, but Commander players in specific, do not like the idea of exiling cards from their own deck. I think this is like the antithesis of a casual Planeswalker, because you know people are going to be like, well, I might exile something I want. Like, I'm going to exile my combo piece. I'm going to exile my coolest card. So I don't think casual players are going to like this card, or Commander players, because they're going to be afraid of exiling their own deck. For more spiky play, though, this reads like a standard playable Planeswalker to me.
Does it?
No.
Doesn't it suck? So you need to be paying life. If you don't, let's say you're not actually paying life, like outside of this card, you ++ ultimate may not actually kill someone. Right?
I mean, so
you minus, you make 2 1/1s, and then you plus, they're 2 2/2s.
Yeah, look at that, 2 2/2.
That's it. And then +1 is draw a card. Like, is this 5 mana playable? This seems a little weak.
It's card selection, right? You get to look at your top 2, so a little better than draw a card. The tokens do grow. We're going back to Eldraine. We also see that adventures are coming back, so there are other ways to get things in exile. Maybe there's maybe the ultimate will look a little scarier than you think, or even those tokens where, like, if you adventure something, that's going to be a card going to exile, which will grow your tokens. So I think there's going to be some additional synergies there. The life paying thing, that's the weird mode. I don't know where that's going. Like, maybe this is a theme in Wilds of Eldraine we haven't seen yet, but that seems like the hardest. The static seems relatively useless in Standard. I don't think this card is good enough to see you play outside Standard. So I'm going to be curious to see, like, I guess your Shockland comes into play untapped and you exile 2 cards rather than lose 2 life. Is that actually worth a 5-mana Planeswalker? It doesn't seem like that mode doesn't seem very
you don't
exciting
lose
to
the
me.
life.
You don't lose the
lose
life.
the
You
life.
don't. So you can do like this plus like Bolus's Citadel in Commander, and you just
Okay,
like get to play
wait.
everything
This
and
is
exile a
very
bunch of
exciting,
cards.
Seth.
Okay.
Keurig and Ashiok?
Oh,
That's
Keurig.
very
It's
exciting.
It's absurd with Keurig. Yeah. Oh, Keurig in
Yeah.
this is like a super combo.
So this has some combo potential, but I think you absolutely need to use that static. If you just play it as like a value planeswalker, like would you rather not take generic Obnixilis, like 5 mana +1 draw -3 punch a thing? This can theoretically finish someone. Like if you're playing a Durley control deck, you -2, make 2 tokens. Maybe they kill the planeswalker, but then you just play your cards. These tokens grow and eventually finish the game. So I could see that, but there's just so many more powerful things you can do for 5 mana.
What
But
about
instead of
the
paying
rich-
life, though, that's crazy. There's got to be some synergies in Standard for that paying life thing, no?
So I've been digging around. There's not a ton for paying life in Standard right now. I would think though, if they're printing this card in Standard, we're gonna get some of these. Probably the best right now is Tenacious Underdog is free. You just exile some cards and you can Tenacious Underdog every turn. So there are some things like that in Standard, but there's not like any specific combo I could find. The card is cool though, and the ability is definitely super unique. And I think the ultimate might be scarier than we're giving it credit for, because remember, all it cares about is your stuff being in exile. So you can like Flashback Memory Deluge. It goes to exile. That's going to be 4 cards exiled. You Farewell and exile a bunch of stuff from the battlefield. Those are going to be in exile. So there are a lot of ways to get things in exile and power up some of these abilities.
It's like you have to combo with the ultimate, though, Seth.
Yeah.
Okay. You Toxic Deluge for like 8,000. Bill yourself.
Yes, there we go.
And then you Thoracle. Done it. Fixed Commander.
Ooh, that actually could work, right? Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, you could exile your whole library, but what do? What's a cool way to win after you've exiled your entire library that's not Thassa's Oracle?
Laboratory Maniac.
I think it has commander applications though. Because of that pay life clause, like I think you could actually play this and get something funny going, at least, if not
I think
good.
Specific decks. Yeah, I don't think you just jam it in any deck, but there's going to be specific decks where that ability is going to be really good. One little warning though, you can only pay life that you have. I saw some people being like, ooh, Aetherflux Reservoir, just like play Aetherflux Reservoir, 50 you win the game. You still got to have 50 life because you can't pay life that you don't have. So I think that does cut off some of the combos people have been suggesting.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. Rules getting in the way of my cool combos.
Silly rules.
All right, we have another mythic, Moonshaker Cavalry, 5 white. So 8 mana, 6/6 Spirit Knight, flying. When it ETBs, creatures you control gain flying and get +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control.
So I think this was going to be a white planeswalker, and then Wizards was like, no, we need a commander staple here. So they decided to only print 1 planeswalker and give white literal Craterhoof Behemoth. Isn't this just Craterhoof Behemoth, but in white? Like, I guess the only thing you're missing is Moonshaker doesn't get haste, so you don't get the Craterhoof Behemoth attack itself. Otherwise, it's just Craterhoof. No? Isn't this card like the best white finisher now?
Did you hear that?
Oh, it's not bad actually. I don't know if your audio is picking it up, but I can't hear it on my end.
Oh, you can't hear it? Perfect then.
But I don't know. This Craterhoof is better, right? The haste is actually epic. And trample better than flying?
I guess I can.
What if someone has a
bit now?
What if someone has a flying chump blocker? Whereas, I guess the alternate for trample is what if they have like 30 toughness on the battlefield or something, right? But I mean, it's good. But would you play this over a Chroma's Will?
I think I would play both of them. I think if I'm any sort of like white creature deck, token style deck, any sort of go wide deck, I think this is a really good finish. I view this as the same level of Craterhoof. If you're a deck that would want to play Craterhoof Behemoth, but you don't have green mana, so you can't play Craterhoof Behemoth, I would just play this card. So I think maybe like ultra stable, maybe not every white deck. If you're a control deck or a Voltron deck, it obviously isn't going to be as good because you're not like putting a ton of creatures on the battlefield. But any sort of go wide deck, Jetmir, any white like Adeleine go wide token style deck, I think your card's just bonkers. Like, I think it just closes out games. I do think flying is probably worse than trample overall, but I think it's actually pretty close because your opponents, like you said, could have a bunch of big ground creatures. And in that situation, flying is actually just better than trample because you're just going to swing over and kill people. Plus, it's a Spirit and a Knight, which is 2 relevant creature types. You just played, what's the new Esper Knight commander? Sidar Jabari or whatever?
Yeah.
That has first strike, and when it hits your opponent, it reanimates. So you can like swing with your Knight deck, reanimate this, pump everything else, kill everyone. So I think Spirits and Knights is great. Any go wide white deck, but I do you not think it's a staple? Is it not that? Am I overrating this card?
It's good. But so create the thing with Creator Hoof is you can also like tutor it with like 8 million cards.
That's true.
And then I don't know.
How,
like, so if I had a couple slots for finishers, so a Chroma's Will over this.
Okay.
Is this better than Coat of Arms?
Yes.
Probably, right?
I would say yes, right? Yeah.
It's better than Coat of Arms. Yeah. So maybe this is a staple. Maybe this is the second. Like, you have like Eldrazi Monument or something. I think that's about it. Right? Like, that's pretty much it for white overruns.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it does slot in there, but I don't think it's as universal because you need a lot of creatures. Like the hoof
you do.
can kill
you
people with itself. Like the hoof itself, like without any creatures, it's still a hasty like big boy. This just comes into play.
Yes.
Also, triple white is a little harder to cast, but I think it's good. I think it'll be in a lot of decks, but I don't know if I would start all white decks with it in it. But I wouldn't start all decks with Crater Hoof in it. So yeah, they're probably about equivalent, I would say.
Pretty close, I would say. Yeah. So definitely an exciting commander card. This next mythic though, Richard, is this card just horrible? What am I missing about Talion?
Are we talking about the fairy noble legendary?
The fairy
Talion?
noble legendary, yeah.
The kindly lord, 4 mana Dimir, 3/4 flying. As it ETBs, choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card.
It's like Chalice of the Void if rather than stopping your opponent from casting a spell, you just like gently poke them a little bit when they cast the spell of the mana value.
I feel this is really good, no?
So, okay.
I gotta do the math on this. If I choose a number like say 2.
2 is the number, yeah.
How many cards in a random person's deck? Because it's not just mana value, right? It's power or toughness. So maybe I should be choosing 1 or 2 or something like that. Like, if it was like every time you cast a spell, you lose 2 life, I draw a card. Like, isn't that absurd?
I mean,
it's not every time. What if it's 50%?
Yeah.
What is 50% of the time? Right? For each opponent, though, right? Isn't that?
Oh, are we talking commander or
this could be
60
good.
card formats? Are we talking commander or 60 card?
This has to be commander. No,
Oh,
60,
okay.
Wait. 60 card dies to Doomblade.
So,
But if it didn't die to Doomblade, like the decks are more consistent. If you name 2, you probably get their whole deck, right?
Yeah, is it worth it? Even though it dies to, like, so in standard, this is going to die to 2 mana removal, most commonly. Shieldred's Edict, etc. Most of the removal would kill 2 mana. Is it worth it to play this name 2? If your opponent kills it, it cycles and they lose 2. If they can't kill it, then it's triggering off a bunch of their random stuff and snowballing. Like, is that enough? I guess the other problem is, like, it's literally in the same slot as Shieldred. So if you're building this deck, you have to, like, choose not to play Shieldred to play this, which seems tough. Like, if Shieldred didn't exist, I'd be a little higher on it, but it's not that bad if you can name the removal number, so at least it cycles if it dies, right?
I think it's good. I think we gotta look at like all the deck lists and come up with like the number that you would choose and what the percentage is. Because if I told you that it's like 50% of the cards you play, I get this trigger. Would this be good? Or what if it was 75%? Like, would this be good?
That would be good. Although,
right?
I don't know if that number exists. We're going to have to math this out. We got to do some Talion math and see. My guess is
50% might be doable. 50% might be doable.
Do you think so? Okay,
especially in standard where you have 4 of everything. And then in
it's
Commander, you have
actually
3 opponents.
If it's actually 50%, then this card is probably pretty
Okay,
good.
what if it's 25%? What is the
No.
percentage at which you start caring about this?
It's got to be pretty close to 50. Like, once it gets up to, like, maybe 40, 35, 40. 25, I'm not excited about it, especially since I could just play Shieldred. In Commander, I'm more excited about it. I'm not really... It's kind of a boring commander, right? Like, I'd play it in the 99 of, like, a Una deck or, like, another fairy deck or maybe just for value. As a commander, though, it's pretty generic. Like, it doesn't push you any direction, right? It's just, like, play this and maybe you draw some cards. I think it's good.
CDH, name one. Name one, win the game. No?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's good enough.
A must kill. It's a must kill. Like, if the problem is you have to play Dimir, which may actually be like terrible. But if you actually could cover the colors, you just make it to 4, play this thing. If your opponent's like, it's like Ristic studies on crack, right? Like, I think a lot of people are undervaluing this because it looks so RNG and terrible. But if you just take each deck and calculate the math to the optimal number, which you should be able to do, right? Like, once the metagame is defined, you should be able to be like, you know, this deck usually looks like this. You can come with a number, and if that number looks like 40 to 50%, I think this card is cracked.
And the 3/4 flyer's not bad, right? We've seen like Sarah Paragon kind of go off. It's not insane stats, but we've seen similar stats on 4-drops be playable. So yeah, I'm gonna have to math this card out and see how high the rate actually is. Because if we
had rotation, this would be insane, right?
If there was no Shieldred, yeah.
If we could rotate Shieldred away from here, then this card would actually be pretty good. But like, even if it was 50%, do you play this over Shieldred? I think you still play Shieldred.
Shieldred is just like so good. Like, Shieldred, there's no, your opponent's gonna draw a card every turn, and you're gonna draw a card every turn, and they might draw more than one card during the turn. So like,
but this
the
draws
floor
you
of
cards.
Shieldred is just
Shieldred
so higher.
Just gains life. This draws cards, Seth.
That is true, but it might do nothing. And Shieldred, there's no way it beats Shield. Plus, it's 2 colors, so that limits the decks you could put it in. But yeah, I'm gonna math this out at some point. I gotta ask you, we're getting near the end, but I gotta ask you about one more card, which is this new creature land, Restless Fortress. So it's an Orzhov ETB tapped creature land. You pay 4, turn it into a 1/4 nightmare, a black and white nightmare. It's still a land. When it attacks, defending player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So these cards aren't good enough for older formats anymore, right? I'm thinking back to, do you remember OG Jund, where like Raging Ravine, Treetop Village, you just like fire up and get in there? We're past that era, right? Like, maybe 10 years ago, this would be a house in Modern, but it's just too slow for older formats now, right?
If it's not Inkmoth Nexus. Yes, it's too slow.
What about Standard, though? Like, are these lands still auto staples, 4 ofs? If you're in the colors, you play 4 of these? Or have we reached the point where they're too slow for Standard?
I don't want to tap land, right?
Ooh.
Do you run out of cards? Like, I don't know. Like, it's close. Like, you have to see the list. But, like, do you actually run out of cards in Standard? And is this 1/4 going to get you there? Because you're forced to play off curve somewhere when you play this. And then there depends on what other lands we have, but sometimes you might actually need to play like other utility lands. But like, it's not a free roll, right? Like, if it was actually a really good land, and this land, I don't know, it's a 1/4, and then you get to drain 2. Maybe that's fine. Maybe that's actually good because it stabilizes and gains you life.
The life gain's not
maybe
bad.
This is playable. But I wouldn't consider it a free roll. Like, it's just free value. Like, it's a tap land. Tap land is a big deal. Like, would you play a Guildgate in your Standard deck? Like, no, right? Like, you need a very good reason to play the Guildgate. So,
I guess going into our current Standard too, you also have the Triomes, which are also tapped.
Yeah.
So you're competing with additional tap lands. Yeah.
Right? Because turn 2, 3, 4, you want to play on curve usually. So I don't know. It seems kind of risky.
On the other hand, though, there's a lot of homes. Esper Control, top tier in Standard. Orzhov Control, good in Standard. Esper Legends, good in Standard. So there are a lot of decks that could slot this in. I think I'm still in these lands gotta be good in Standard. I haven't got to the point where I've written off creature lands in Standard, even though...
What if they just power crept it, Seth? What if it was a shock land and then the creature part was like worse?
That's what they need to do to make them modern playable. Or like, what do we see the Adventures in the Forgotten Realm cycle? Like, they were fast lands essentially. If it's one of your first 2 lands that comes into play untapped, that was enough to get those lands back to modern and Pioneer to some extent. Even those aren't like staples. They're really good in Pioneer, like fringe modern and legacy cards. So I think they do need, like, if they want these to see play outside of standard, they're going to have to give you some chance of them having come into play untapped at this point. Or else they're just too slow. But I still think standard, they're going to be really good. I'm hyped for more creature lands. We've never had a standard where creature lands are bad so far. Maybe this will be the one, but I
think 2 color decks can play them, but not 3 color decks. Because 3 color decks, you want your triomes, and then you can't play that many tap lands. But 2 color decks, are we playing any tap lands today? I don't think we...
Some of that, like, actually, Orzhov Control plays the Triome, actually, just for cycling purposes, and I guess, like...
Yeah, this has got to be better, right? This has got to be better, or is it? I don't know. Like, maybe a free card is better than this. What if you just play... What if you just play Lorien Revealed? Like, what if you just play a cycler?
It is a lot to fire up. 4 is a lot. Although I like that it gains life. Like, it blocks well and gains life against aggro, and it can close out the game through blockers because it's an attack trigger rather than the combat trigger. So I think there's some upside. I guess we'll see. Maybe it's not a 4 of anymore, but I think this card's still got
This one stabilizes the game for you, so it actually has a purpose. But like if it was actually just like a 4/4 attacker, like maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah. Anyway, you can check out all the spoilers over at mtgpreviews.com. Spoiler season going to kick back off, I believe, August 15th, so a couple weeks from now, although there's some con coming up next weekend that they're going to do some spoilers at, so we'll see. Maybe we get some surprise spoilers for next Monday's cast. Do we have time for fish mail, Richard? Do we get enough time today?
We're running long. Maybe we'll save it for next week.
All right, so if people want to send in... Yeah, there we go. Where do they send them?
Send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail on X, on Twitter, and we'll get to your questions on air.
Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of episode 444 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Richard, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about a new BNR update and whatever else goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have a lovely week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.